So today we are going to dive deep into a U.S. national security strategy, but probably not in the way you're thinking. Let's just, for a moment, set aside traditional geopolitics, because we're about to explore a fascinating analysis that argues this 2025 document, it's not just policy. It might just be an unintentional blueprint for, well, for prophecy.
And boom, right from the get-go, the source material drops this bombshell. It frames the strategy less as a roadmap for stability and more as an unintentional accelerant for what it calls latter days scenarios. Now that is a startling idea, and it's the central mystery we're going to try and unravel today. I mean, how on earth could a modern security document possibly fit such an ancient and frankly ominous description?
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the strategy itself. What's actually in it? Then we'll introduce this ancient lens, this unique way of interpreting it. From there, we'll dig into the specific roles it seems to set up for Europe, Russia, and America. And then at the end, we're going to put all those pieces together and see what kind of picture it paints. It's pretty startling. Okay, first up, a strategy of upheaval. So, to be really clear about this, the 2025 National Security Strategy, or NSS, this isn't just some minor policy tweak. No way. According to the analysis we're looking at, it's a fundamental, ground-up overhaul of the entire global order. It's like they're saying, it's a whole new ballgame with a completely new set of rules. So the whole strategy basically stands on four main pillars. 1. Force Europe to rearm. 2. Strategically box in and isolate Russia. 3. Build this impenetrable defense shield around the U.S. homeland. And 4. Pull back from being the world's police officer. Now, if you look at each one of those by itself, you might just shrug and say, okay, that seems kind of pragmatic. But the real question is, what happens when you stop looking at them as separate policies and start seeing them as interconnected gears in a much, much larger machine? And this, right here, is where our whole analysis takes a really sharp turn. To understand that bigger picture, the source material argues we have to put down our normal geopolitical glasses, the political science lens, and instead we have to pick up a much, much older one, the lens of biblical eschatology. So, for anyone who's not familiar with the term, eschatology is basically the part of theology that deals with the final events of history, what many people just call the end times. Now, it's really important to note, the analysis we're looking at isn't using this as a statement of faith. Instead, it's using it as a kind of interpretive key, like a cipher, that it claims reveals a hidden pattern in the NSS that you just can't see otherwise. And it gets really specific. The analysis zeroes in on three main prophetic ideas. First, a revived Roman Empire, which it connects to a modern European superpower. Second, the War of Gog and Magog, a massive invasion from the north into the Middle East. And third, a warning about a time of false peace and safety. The core argument here is mind-blowing, that the 2025 NSS doesn't just happen to allow for these scenarios, it actively, if unintentionally, creates the exact conditions needed for them to happen. All right, let's dive into Europe first. The analysis makes this really bold connection. It draws a straight line from the NSS policy, the one forcing Europe to rearm, all the way back to an ancient prophecy in the book of Daniel, the one about a revived Roman Empire, which is symbolized by a giant statue with legs made of iron. I mean, just look at that number, 5%. The NSS is telling NATO countries to more than double their defense spending, from 2% of GDP all the way up to 5%. The source material we're looking at is pretty blunt about this. It doesn't call it a simple budget increase. It calls it a wartime footing. So in this interpretation, the U.S. is essentially forcing its allies to forge that iron, the raw military power, of a brand new, independent superpower. But here's the thing. The prophecy is super specific. The statue's feet are made of iron mixed with clay, which means it's strong but also very brittle. And the analysis argues this is a perfect metaphor for modern Europe. The NS is pushing for the iron, the unified command structure, the massive defense spending. But at the same time, you have the clay, all the internal divisions, the destabilizing migration policies, the loss of national identities, the rise of ethno-nationalism. The result? You get a superpower that is absolutely terrifying on a military level, but internally it's fragile and divided. A precise match, the source argues, for the prophecy. Okay, so this newly rearmed Europe has a direct knock-on effect for the next big piece of the puzzle, Russia. The source material makes a pretty provocative claim here. It says the U.S. strategy isn't just to contain Russia, it's to deliberately maneuver it, to corner it, into performing a very specific, prophesied action.
The analysis uses this really vivid phrase for it, setting hooks in jaws. Now that phrase, hooks in jaws, it comes straight from the book of Ezekiel, and it's absolutely crucial to this argument. It implies that the great invader from the north, who this analysis identifies as Russia, doesn't launch its big invasion just out of aggression. No, it suggests they're irresistibly coerced, like they're literally being dragged into it against their will. So the million-dollar question becomes, is the 2025 NSS the one setting those hooks? So here's the three-step process the analysis lays out. Step 1, you block the West. The U.S. policy forces Europe into becoming this hostile, rearmed bloc, basically an impenetrable wall. Step 2, you choke the economy. The U.S. floods Europe with its own liquefied natural gas, completely cutting off Russia's main energy market and its primary source of cash. So what happens next? Step 3, you force a pivot south. Economically desperate, completely hemmed in, Russia's only path for resources and influence is now toward the Middle East. It's not a choice, it's a forced pivot. Okay, so we've got Europe rearmed and Russia redirected. So where does that leave America in all this? Well, according to this analysis, America's role is to pull back, to withdraw behind this incredible high-tech defense shield. The source gives it a name, the Golden Dome. The whole idea is to create this illusion of absolute, untouchable safety. And this chart, wow, it really puts the sheer ambition of this thing into perspective. I mean, we're talking about a potential cost that could run into the trillions of dollars. The Golden Dome absolutely dwarfs other legendary defense projects like France's Maginot Line or even the Star Wars program from the 80s. The analysis says this isn't just about defense. It's about a kind of technological hubris, an attempt to build a fortress so perfect, so impenetrable, that America can basically just turn its back and ignore whatever's happening in the rest of the world. And that idea, that belief in perfect technological safety, well, it gets juxtaposed with this incredibly stark warning from 1 Thessalonians. You know, the official doctrine promises peace and safety, but this ancient text says, be careful. Because the very moment people start saying, we've done it, we have peace and safety, that is the precise moment that sudden destruction arrives. It's a chilling contrast. And all of this leads to a question that has, frankly, puzzled eschatological scholars for decades. If you look at the prophecies about a final great invasion of Israel, there's always been one big, glaring omission. Where is America? Why is the world's reigning superpower and Israel's greatest ally totally absent from the picture? The analysis we're examining claims that the 2025 NSS finally gives us the answer. This little bit of text, the Trump corollary, it provides the exact political justification for doing nothing. Think about it. If you're totally secure behind your impenetrable Golden Dome, you could easily, logically conclude that a war way over in the Middle East doesn't directly threaten your interests. And if it doesn't, well, then you just stand aside. The mystery of America's absence is, according to this view, solved. So let's step back and put all the pieces on the board. You've got Europe's rearmament, Russia's containment and redirection, and America's retreat into isolationism. According to this analysis, these aren't just separate random policies. No, they snap together like puzzle pieces, and they form one single, cohesive, and, well, deeply prophetically charged picture of the world. And this is it. This is the final world stage that the NSS allegedly sets. You can literally see all the actors taking their places, just as described in the prophecies. Europe is a new independent military power, the revived empire. Russia is economically cornered and forced to look south. That's Gog's motivation. America has withdrawn, secure in its fortress, the absent protector. And Israel, after some regional conflicts, is left feeling secure, making it the perfect target. The analysis concludes that these aren't just similar conditions. They are the exact preconditions required for that final, prophesied conflict. Which brings us to the staggering final conclusion of this whole analysis, that in its search for its own ultimate security, the United States may have, unintentionally, and with almost surgical precision, built the very scaffolding for a prophesied global cataclysm. It's a roadmap designed for safety that, through this lens, leads to the exact opposite. And so that leaves us with one last, pretty unsettling question to chew on. If a nation's grand strategy for self-preservation, a strategy designed by secular, modern planners, if it happens to align perfectly with an ancient script for global judgment, what do you even make of that? Is it just strategy? Is it prophecy coming to pass? Or is it, just maybe, one of the most profound and chilling coincidences in all of human history?